Hi everybody, thanks for listening. This week I sat down with Senior Master Sergeant Rockey to talk about deliberate development. When I put the list out originally, I called it Getting Ahead of the Bullet, but it's really the same concept. If you don't know Senior Master Sergeant Rockey, I hope you get a chance to meet him and maybe even work with him someday. I personally feel fortunate to call him one of my friends, and I'm one of the few people I'll probably stay in touch with even after I retire from the Air Force. He's one of these guys who came up pretty quickly through the ranks. And not just because he's smart and a good tester like a lot of people might, but because he's actually a natural-born leader and manager. I've spent a lot of hours with him, just talking with him, behind closed doors, mentoring him and getting some mentorship. I love picking his brain about this kind of stuff. But in this interview, he talks a lot about the importance of finding a good mentor, not just waiting for someone to come along, but actually seeking someone out. Deliberate development isn't just about developing our subordinates, but also about developing ourselves. So thanks for listening. This whole thing started, right? Because, not the podcast, but just talking to you, because I had this idea. In fact, I put it on that list called Getting Ahead of the Bullet. And in my mind and in my experience, it's good to sit down with a subordinate, right, and help them come up with a game plan, for their year or for their career or for whatever it is that they want to do. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And then also, I mentioned it in the email that I sent you too, that when I was talking to Sergeant Allen, he and I both kind of grew up on the flight line. Mm-hmm. And the mentality out there is we've got planes to catch and bombs to throw. So there's not a lot of time for this touchy-feely mentorship stuff. Mentorship is get your job done, shut up, and we have to press. And I'm sure if somebody from the maintenance career field ever heard this, they'd, become an internet troll real quick. Because that there are some really fantastic people out there, who are doing a good job with mentorship, who are doing a good job with development. But that wasn't Sergeant Allen and I's experience. We didn't really come to terms with being an NCO until we were both kind of seasoned staff sergeants and just decided to do it on our own, So, yeah, but we want to avoid that, right?
I believe so. And I think we're doing a better job of that as a force because I think that we have tailored our professional development and career paths through PME to kind of look at mentorship more. Like when I went through ALS, it was all about counseling.
Yes.
There was nothing in there about mentoring or developing your people.
No.
It was about addressing an issue or, a misconduct or whatever it was that the subordinate was doing wrong and how to use progressive discipline to figure, to correct behavior. And now I think our professional military education is focused more on knowing yourself and being able to identify strengths and weaknesses in your subordinates in order to, one, optimize their potential for how they help support and execute your main mission, but then also to be able to recognize where their weaknesses are so that you can help build a plan to strengthen them.
Don't you think you can make a good argument that at the staff sergeant level and the senior airman level, that progressive discipline is the sort of thing that you would want them to be able to focus on? Whereas in the senior NCO ranks, you're going to be more interested in doing the mentorship and development.
Yeah, I don't disagree. One of the things...
But I guess the other half of that, though, would be, I have no experience with ALS, in the past 7 or 8 years.
Sure.
Are they teaching more of that kind of stuff in ALS now? Is there more focus on that?
You mean PME or ALS specifically?
ALS specifically. I know PME does, but I don't know. ALS has got to be kind of like baby steps before you get into.
Sure, I'm sure that they still talk about counseling and being able to put together an LOC and feedbacks and EPRs and how to do all that stuff. But again, I think that they're also starting to dip into the things about character identification, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and still being able to try to identify those in those who you're going to lead.
Right, yeah.
You know, trying to make smarter leaders. You know, back in the day, and you talked about it with what you and the first sergeant went through on the flight line, is that a lot of just very mission focused, directive, do this now, don't complain about it, I'm not telling you why, and it's the way it is.
Right.
And we always say that one of the things that separates us from the other services is that we take time to teach our young airmen and NCOs why we do things and give them some leverage to kind of make decisions. And I think we have to start, when you become a first line supervisor, start working on those tools. Because just like you experienced, we weren't doing that in the past.
No.
And you didn't get quality mentorship as an airman, because who were you being supervised? By a staff sergeant who had never been taught any of those tools.
Right.
And so then it is just going to build. And so what we saw happen was in PME, the things that were being taught in the Senior NCO Academy started being taught at NCO Academy. And then things that were used to be taught at the NCO Academy are now taught in ALS. So
they're pushing that back.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because it's like, yeah, the earlier you start developing those skills, the longer, the sooner they'll become long-lasting skills.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And you'll end up having, 10 or 15 years from now, you'll have a much higher quality group of senior NCOs than even what we have now, And I would argue that the senior NCOs we have now, in many ways, way higher quality than what I knew when I was coming up, because of that kind of mentality, I think. But that doesn't really go into the deliberate development, though.
Well, it builds
because you gotta kind of.
So it builds the foundation, because you have to have those tools as a supervisor and a leader of, whether it's a flight or a function or a section or whatever it is. You have to have those fundamental tools, being able to know and recognize strengths and weaknesses in your people in order to deliberately develop them. Right? Because what are you going to develop them on? If they're already really strong on something, then you don't necessarily need to, keep giving them the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it does. I think it is at the very beginning of deliberate development, is having those tools to be able to assess your people and then, grow them.
When I was talking to Major Wallace, he made a really good point about PME. His experience at PME is that often it kind of becomes secretive. So when somebody would come back from squadron officer school, and he would say, "Hey, what'd you learn? Was it great? Blah, blah, blah." And they'd say, "Oh, no, we're not going to talk about it because we don't want to ruin the experience," or, people made up all these excuses where they wouldn't talk about that kind of thing. And his attitude now is that that's a foul. That we need to be able to take the lessons that we learn, bring them back, because we get reblued and we learn new things and we want to implement them. But sometimes if you take an idea that you learned and you don't talk about it, you don't say, "This is what I learned at Senior NCO Academy and this is why I'm implementing this because this is a great thing," then it can seem like you're just kind of being micromanagerial, or, people are going to say, "Oh, well, Helgerson went to Senior NCO Academy and now he's got all these great ideas." You know what I mean? Instead of sitting down with folks and saying, "Well, this is why we're doing this and this is what's going on." Maybe not like at, the Commander's Day, where you're going to get up there and give a lecture about all the cool things you learned at Senior NCO Academy.
Right.
But at least so there's an understanding of, like, no, there's a system and we have to be able to trust the system. And this is what the Air Force is teaching, and this is, what is being implemented, so this is why we're doing it this way.
So since I've been to the Senior NCO Academy, I've had the opportunity to do organize the Senior NCO professional development seminars here in the detachment for the past 2 years. And I tried to put a lot of those things into the things that I talked about, and try to give some of that knowledge to the NCOs that are about to be senior NCOs and expected to start to learn and implement some of these tools.
So getting back to my original idea of getting ahead of the bullet. Originally, I thought it'd be a great idea, and I've done this with some people, but I've never supervised more than like 3 or 4 people at a time. You know, I've never had a big team like what Sergeant Tokars has, or what Sergeant McCabe or Sergeant Jerby, or what we're working with, or Gallagher. And so I've always had the luxury to be able to sit down, one-on-one. It's kind of the nature of what EAs do, and just help somebody come up with a plan or come up with some ideas or brainstorm some stuff, But the biggest thing or initial reason for me doing that was to avoid the scramble at the end of the year or the scramble at the end of the quarter when you need bullets for the EPR, or for the 1206 and for the other kind of stuff, And my idea was that, well, let's look at the other quarterly award winners and let's look at the other annual award winners,
right? And,
people who got the promote now statements. You know what I mean? And look at what they did and look at what they accomplished and look at, what it was that they were doing that put them into that bracket.
Right.
And how do we duplicate that? I mean, but how do you do that? It works great if you're one-on-one, but how can you do something like that if you're in a position like, Sergeant Zerby, where you got, a room full of tech sergeants and staff sergeants and not a lot of time on your plate?
Well, I think you do the same things that you're kind of talking about now, and that's communicate other people's successes and say, hey, opportunities are out there. Get involved. It looks really good to get involved with the joint community here, and with the booster club or whatever it is. Those things aren't going to be the sole reason on why they're going to get quarterly awards or promoted or anything like that. But the Little Brown Book still talks about the whole person concept and being a well-rounded individual. And let's face it, the Air Force does not like stagnation in their members. By design, we should progress. And if you don't progress fast enough, then you hit higher tenure and you're separated from there. So we have to progress.
Right.
And I think the roadmap is that brown book. And how do you get people to strive to hit all aspects of being a good airman and NCO? Is show that, hey, other people have successes out there and this is how they got there, and you communicate that to everybody. And and that's one of the reasons I put together this Built Right, Battle Ready email that I try to send out every 4 to 6 weeks or so since I've been in the seat, is that I want the rest of the detachment to see some of the really good accomplishments that are happening in the other schools, and that, hey, there's opportunities out there. Our guys are doing really good things. And it doesn't have to be some big extravagant thing all the time.
Right.
But you get involved and you try to hit all aspects of a good, well-rounded NCO who does well at their job, which predominantly all of our NCOs that are here are doing that. Look to improve as a leader and an NCO and some sort of self-improvement, and be a good quality community member and get involved where you can.
Yeah.
I think the roadmap is
pretty clear
for that kind of stuff is pretty set. Some people want to do it and some don't. And, so there was a chief who taught me one time. He had a saying, and I've used it a few times. And, he said to me, because I was getting frustrated when I was a tech sergeant select, I was running a flight at Milton Hall. And I was getting frustrated because I was having a hard time getting some of my airmen to be that well-rounded person and kind of I had not like a lot of troublemakers. Nobody was getting in a huge amount of trouble, but just some people who were having a hard time embracing the core values still as like a senior airman, and a hard time embracing professionalism. And you try to have these talks with them and kind of show them the path. And man, it was so frustrating for me. So I talked to the chief, and he just looked at me. He said, "You know what?" He said, "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink."
Right.
And he said, but you can make them wish they drank. I'm like, oh, okay. I got it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where you give it to it some good, what he meant by that was give them some good quality feedback. Mm-hmm. Mark them appropriate on their EPR. Right. They're not going to get promoted. Mm-hmm. And if they're not going to take your mentorship and your attempts to try to get them on the right path, then you have to mark them appropriately. Right. And that is the you can make them wish they drank. Mm-hmm. You know?
I think I would add on to that, because I'm an obnoxious optimist. Sure. A bit, except on my bad days. Right. When I'm not at all. Okay. But I would say you can also you can prepare them so that they want to drink. Mm-hmm. You know, like if you take a horse and you just leave him to water, it's not thirsty. It's
a great point.
It's not going to drink. But if you take that same horse, you go ride him around for a while, and you give him some salt and you that kind of stuff, he's going to be making a beeline to go over there and do that.
Absolutely.
And I think the way that can translate is, and I've had a little bit of experience with this, it's hit or miss. But if you take somebody that you see that they've got potential, but they don't really see it themselves, or they're just kind of lackadaisical, mm-hmm. Sometimes you can give them, and actually this happened to me a lot too, is that you give them a little more responsibility, and you can say, no, you're going to take this on because I know that you're capable of doing this. Sure. And once they do that on their own, then they'll say, oh, shoot, I'm a senior airman, and I'm practically doing technical sergeant stuff. Maybe I should go get myself promoted, you know?
Yep. It happened, that kind of stuff happened for me when I was a Master Sergeant Select at Ramstein. Mm-hmm. And I had a chief select as a immediate supervisor. Mm-hmm. An opportunity came up with Air Force Assistance Fund base-wide event. They were putting on a sports day. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you're going to lead it. And I had just taken over this role as flight superintendent. I had 22 people that I'm supervising, and I'm a new senior NCO. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be tough. I told him, I said, Chief, I don't know if I can balance all this. I got a wife and 4 kids and all of this responsibility, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a huge event on Ramstein, thousands of people. He's like, you can do it. It's not that hard. Mm-hmm. And he was right. And so I wanted to shy away from it, right. But he didn't allow me, because he knew that once I got past the initial fear and overwhelming feeling at first, right, and got my foot in the door and got things rolling, that it was going to be easy. Yeah. Because he knew that you get other people involved and they would help you, and right. And he was right, and I think in the long run it really helped me. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated him doing that for me. Mm-hmm. He pushed me. And I'm not really a person that needs pushed very often. Yeah, because I'm pretty self-motivated, and
every once in a while we all need that kind of.
But we all do. Yeah. So sometimes we will think like, oh, they have initiative. So if they're not doing something right now, it's probably because either they can't, or they just don't want to, or they're overwhelmed, right, or whatever it is. So you kind of leave them go. Mm-hmm. I think we all come to that crossroads at one point where you're like, I'm going to take a break and I'm not going to do this. Right. When it's actually probably the time where you should do something.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to my idea of planning out the year, because then you can plan a break time in there. Yeah. Because so right now they're planning the Air Force Ball, right? They're trying to get all those details together. And, some of the people on the committee, they've got all these other sorts of things that they're trying to do, and right after that's done, then there's going to be the Christmas party or the holiday party, whatever you want to call it. But if you can plan out your year ahead of time, then you can say, okay, well, this function ends on, September the 18th, and then this function is not going to start until then, which means that'll give me a week to kind of clear my head and think about stuff. And because what happens, like what you were saying, is that once one of these things are done, if you think I'm going to take a break for a little while, then you get on your heels, and it's easy to just stay in break mode for a long time.
It is. It's happened. It happens with people when they're out of school.
Oh yeah,
I'm just going to take a break. And then you're like, wow, this is nice. I got no classes to worry about, no homework.
Oh, man.
And it's just so easy to stay out of it.
Right.
So, yeah, it absolutely
And
happens.
if you put something like that, too, into your initial feedback, there's a couple of goals that you've reached with whoever you're supervising, then you can pull that out and say, hey, we agreed. This is going to be one of your goals for this year. This is one of the things that you set out to achieve. And it looks like you're on your laurels a little bit. What's going on? You know? And that can also be a good conversation starter to say, hey, how's your family life? How's your financial life? How's your mental health? Like, why are you on your laurels right now? You shouldn't be, because you've got this goal. So, if there's something else in your way, then maybe let's address this so that we can wind you back up and get you going.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think it's good. I think people getting involved in things that they like is a great thing to do. And what's going to happen throughout that year, like you said, things that you would enjoy doing. But then you also have to look at some opportunities that's going to take them out of their comfort zone too.
Right.
The funny thing is that a lot of our instructors are already out of their comfort zone. They do something on the daily basis out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, I forget about that.
Which is talking.
I'm so comfortable with public speaking that I forget that this has got to be. That's got to be a bear for some of these folks.
Yeah. We talk about it when we talk about a lot of times force distribution. And sometimes the question is when we're talking about different individuals and how we're marking EPRs and stuff. The question comes up is, what are these guys doing out of their comfort zone? My response is, they're instructing.
Their job.
They weren't brought into the Air Force as instructors. They were brought in as heavy equipment operators or engineer assistants or vehicle operators or emergency managers. And now we have them teaching. That's there. They're already doing something above their peers on a daily basis that's out of their comfort zone. Yeah. So, I really like what you said about kind of a counter to the lead the horse to water, can't make him drink, but you can make him wish he drank. Because you're right. Because if you encourage them and motivate them to run around, right, then they'll want to drink, and you won't have to get to making them wish they drank. Right.
You can make them wish that they were promoted. But it's the same thing. I just, in my mind, the way that you said it, just there was like that little bit of a negative, and I could hear some of the people saying, "Oh, well, you're gonna blah blah blah."
And I don't,
but it's the same thing. It's doing the same thing. It's just a different verbiage.
So here I think is the difference between generations of leaders, right?
Yeah,
that came to me from a chief that was about to be ready to retire at 28 or 29 years of service.
Right,
and that's how he had been raised.
Right.
The new leaders. This younger generation of senior NCOs that we have now are taught how to encourage the horse to run. Right? And for all the right reasons.
Right.
And that's what we try to capitalize on. What motivates people. Some people like immediate reward, time off. Some people like quarterly awards. Some people want promotion recommendations. Some people want public accolades or just hey, thanks a lot for doing this. I mean, so that's what they're teaching us as they teach us how to be leaders and develop people.
Right.
Know your people. Get them to have that intrinsic motivation to want to run. And then they'll drink. Yeah. And then you'll be good.
Or at the same time, push them to run. Get behind them and say, no, you need to run now.
Some of your NCOs and remember you're going to have to do that with,
Yeah.
We know just by being around people for as much as we have over our lives because we're old.
Wow. I'm old.
Okay. I'm getting there. everyone's different.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, definitely.
Everyone's different. Everyone needs different incentives and motivation and different levels of push to get them to where you know that they should be or where they want to be.
When we were at the last Commander's Day, we had in our discussion group, one of the folks in there had a really good point that, like, when you're talking about knowing your airmen and knowing your NCOs and understanding their goals, and the comment was that sometimes the individual's goal is to finish this enlistment, take advantage of their GI Bill, and go do something else entirely with their lives, and which is their prerogative, and that's fine. Sure. And as long as you're showing up and doing an outstanding job while you're here, then I don't have any problem with that whatsoever, and I will completely encourage you to do that. But the observation was that sometimes we, in senior leadership positions, will get focused on gotta promote, and somebody whose plan is to, I'm just doing 6 years and then use my GI Bill, isn't going to be focused so much on the promotion as much as on, you know, what's going to be their next phase of life. You know what I mean? And that one took a little bit of thinking for me, you know, because I've always been in the, well, you got to focus on getting promoted and what's going to be your next step and, you know, that kind of thing. But my goal had always been, ever since I was Airman First Class, I had an opportunity to work with a senior master sergeant for a day. I think I won like Airman of the Quarter or something like that. And part of the thing was you got to be like the exec to the flight superintendent for the day.
Sure.
And which, looking back, doesn't, you know, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best incentive for something like that, but I thought it was pretty cool because he was awesome, you know?
Right.
And I got to just shadow him for the day. And by the end of the day, I knew that I didn't want to be a senior master sergeant. Like, I knew for sure. Like,
why? What was the kind of stuff that he was doing that
it was just, it was the kind of thing that you do every day. You know, where it's just like, you know, dealing with administrative issues and dealing with airman management and dealing with like all those things that a senior master sergeant has to do, anybody in a superintendent position. Mm-hmm. And I knew enough about myself at the time to say, I'm not going to be able to do that. And that's not a skill set that I'm interested in developing so that someday I will be able to do that.
Sure.
Right. But I had worked with enough master sergeants to know that I could be really good at that. Sure. Like, I'm going to make a great master sergeant someday. And then that became my goal. So as I was going through my career, like when I was ready, like when I'd been a staff sergeant for a while, when I was ready to be promoted, when I thought I was ready to be promoted, I would go apply myself and I'd study, and then I'd get promoted whenever it was time. You know, and the same thing with technical sergeant, the same thing with master sergeant. It was like, I did it on my time, you know?
Sure.
And that frustrated a lot of my leadership. So 1 year, 2 years, I declined testing for master sergeant because I didn't think I was ready yet. I didn't, you know, just looking at who it was.
I've never heard of anybody.
Yeah. And I just went in and I just signed the thing and said, no, I declined testing, and I left. And that was it. And a lot of people came and they said, well, you should have at least tried. You should have, like, you don't know what would happen, blah, blah, blah. But I knew that I wasn't ready to be a master sergeant. And I knew that, like, in my personal life and everything like that, that I didn't even want to be a contender, because if I did get the stripe and I wasn't ready for it, then I'd be taking the stripe away from somebody else who was ready, you know, or somebody else who was really eager for it. You know what I mean? So, but my superintendent, my senior at the time, he came unglued. He thought it was the worst possible move I ever could have made. He was all kinds of mad at me. But I explained to him, I said, look, the only thing, if I decline testing, the only thing that happens to me is that I'm not eligible for promotion this cycle. And I don't want to be promoted this cycle. So that works out really fine. That's great, you know? And now even, the one risk that I did run with that is under the old EPR system. They could have objectively put me in for a 4 EPR. And that hurts because other people look at that in different ways when they look at your RIP and all this kind of thing. But in the new EPR system, okay, it's fine. So you can just put like, was he put not ready or
right?
You know, just kind of don't give him the, you know, oh my goodness, this is my best guy box and press. But I say all that though because I do think that we got to find that balance between, you know, helping people to get promoted because, okay, so there's the reason I told that whole story is because that was my scenario, that was my situation, and that was how I saw the world. But I think in hindsight, what my senior was trying to tell me is just what we talked about earlier. He was trying to say, no, dude, you are ready. You may not see it, but you need to be pushing yourself to do this kind of thing. He was trying to make me want to drink, I think is what he was trying to do.
He obviously didn't do a good enough job.
He already had his retirement orders at the time, and he was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't find out until after the fact.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you want to talk about? I did talk earlier about, you know, being self-aware and knowing yourself and your people, and
that seems to be a theme of all these things.
Man, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know yourself apparently to such a high degree that you're like, no way, man, I'm not even testing. Like that you're taking it, you know, you take it to a point where other people be like, listen, I'm really nervous. Right. I'm really not sure that I'm ready.
Right.
But I'm sure as heck gonna try because I want to get promoted.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, so that's really unique, man. I don't know if I've ever heard it, but you're a unique guy.
I'm a weird dude. Well,
I said unique, you said weird, so yeah. Sure.
Yeah, is what it is. Yeah, is what it is. I'm really excited about the season premiere of Doctor Who this weekend. So that's
I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. Welcome to Sean's world.
Okay.
One of the things. Oh, okay. Two things. So, when I was talking to Sergeant Tokars, he made a really good point. You were talking about, you know, volunteer opportunities and doing extra stuff, you know, outside of your day-to-day responsibilities and you know, pushing your limits and stuff like that. Sergeant Tokars made a really good point, and I want to get your perspective on this. That when the commander sits down and looks at, you know, who's gonna forgive me, is it the must promote or the promote now is the better one?
Promote now is the better one.
The promote now, like who's gonna get that promote statement, promote now statement. One of the things that they're gonna look at is not just who volunteered, you know, put in hours for Habitat for Humanity, but who put in volunteer hours for things that are going to help the unit.
Yep,
so like organizing a commander's call or putting together a retirement ceremony or things like that, or getting together a team of people that are going to go to Habitat for Humanity, not just go down there and grab a hammer, you know, because and they're still going to. Commander's going to weigh that differently of who's taking these responsibilities and what's benefiting me and the mission.
Right. And so how about a team of people or a person who organizes a team of people to put together something to help improve our airmen outside the training? You know what I mean? That adds value to the unit. That helps improve our airmen. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking for, you know. I think that's what the commanders are looking for on the EPRs is what kind of effort are you making to improve the unit? Mm-hmm. What kind of, here specifically, you know, what kind of efforts are you making to help improve the training environment? Mm-hmm. All of our instructors do a good job, and when they're in front of the students and teaching, they do it to the best of their ability. You know, I'm confident that they are following AETC standards and giving their students the best that they can that day. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the expectation, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, but taking that to the next level is how are you improving that? How are you making it easier for the next instructor to come in and give it their best? Or how are you making it better for the students to learn? Or more easy for the students to learn, or And if you're going to put time and effort to do things outside of the classroom and outside your primary duty, what's the value in it? You know, because it's not always just about the action, and it's about, you know, what kind of impact are you having, especially on the airmen. You know, so
I haven't had a lot of interaction with the schoolhouses, and I think, admittedly, that's a foul on my part, to see what sorts of things people are doing to improve. But I do know that some of the folks that I worked with over at Brown Hall, they PCS, but they were constantly trying to put in systems that would kind of automate, like how do we manage leave programs, and how do we reach out into the field, and how do we use, you know, more technology to teach this kind of stuff, to prepare people more. Like, I had my little pet project. I didn't go very far with it, where I was trying to take some of the things within the CDC and make videos that I could put on YouTube or on the Mill Suite channel, to say, hey, you know, this is how you do this particular thing that's in the CDC.
Trying to automate portions of the CDC, or at least have an automated module that goes along with a section of the CDC, so they can refer to that.
Right. Yeah. Like, your CDC writer right now is working on developing Blackboard and and all that kind of stuff. That's gonna be the next generation of what's going on. Yes. You know.
Well, that's one of the, you know, our debt vision really is, it talks about exploiting tomorrow's technology in today's classroom. Right. So, you know, we need to keep doing that, and that's the one nice thing about so continuity is always key in a military organization, right? But I think that's one of the keys to us bringing in people that rotate in and out of time, is because we embrace continuous process improvement. You know, coming back all the way from when I came in, talking about AFSO 21 and all these different programs that have been implemented since then, to look at how do we do things. And so that was kind of I don't know, it seemed to be like AFSO 21 concept was pretty new to the Air Force when it came out. This organized approach to improving things that are in place, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people have been doing that for forever, you know. Yeah. But
have you been through that process?
I've been through portions of that process in different aspects, right? And so but we do this now through our professional military education. In one way, shape, or form, they are teaching us continuous process improvement, right? Change management. You know, these things that help us look at different aspects of our job with an objective eye, right? So that we can identify areas where we can gain effectiveness or efficiency. And then we have the ability to, because we're not in the Army, we have the ability to go to our leadership and say, hey, this is an efficiency or effectiveness change that I think we can make to really bring some improvement to our organization, whether it's individuals or through processes or programs.
Were you here when, I knew you were here, but there's a senior master sergeant, I want to say he was a Whiteman, and he wrote that letter to the editor that got into the base paper here about, do you remember this? You got that nod. Where it was all about, okay, we need to practice leadership, but we need to, like, ask our airmen and develop strategies for the team, and then, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then, who was it, the command sergeant major called Chief Donahoe and said, no.
Yes.
That's not
a completely different mentality.
Right.
It's a completely different mentality.
And because I read the article and I thought, yeah,
spot on, man.
That's great. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly what we need to do. But yeah, in the Army, I can see where that would be a real problem. Because just given the situations and scenarios that they go into, I don't want feedback. You know, I need, like, more times than not, I'm going to need just some blind obedience here.
Sure.
Just do what I'm telling you to do, and don't give me any lip.
I talked to our airmen when they come into the detachment, and I tell them that very same thing. I said, don't forget where you are. This is military technical training school, and there are going to be times when our cadre are firm and direct with you.
Right.
And you need to be obedient and do what they say, and do it with sense of urgency, and move on. Right. And as you become a more seasoned military member, you will start to figure out which situations you're in that warrant you asking why.
Right.
Because not all of them do.
Right.
So as you become more experienced and kind of feel out situations that you're going to be in, you're going to figure out, okay, staff sergeant, why do I need to do that? Right. This doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And then you're going to figure out the time that says, yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
Right.
And go do it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. One thing that I tell those airmen is that to always keep in mind that, whether it's the handbook test or whether it's the MTLs or whether, it's your TI at Lackland or whatever it is that's going on, these aren't crazy people who hate you, who are just deliberately malicious and trying to make your life difficult. There may be a couple people like that.
Right.
But by and large, there's method to the madness. And at that point in their career, they just need to trust that there is method and that these are trustworthy people and that the system is in place. And it's been very, very well thought through by people with really big brains. And just keep moving forward. So, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about is, I'm not sure. So you asked me to send this email, and I was just brainstorming stuff.
Sure.
Like, what's coming to mind? And this has been something that's been running around my head, is the service before self. And I think it ties into, I think the question comes from, like I was saying in the small group, we got a couple folks who said, hey, I just want to do this time and then get out, and then, or people, or there's like all this focus on wanting to get promoted. And I have a very distinct philosophy on what service before self means. But I wanted to have a discussion with you about that.
Sure.
So
I think service before self is different for everybody. And I think at different points in your career, it will be different. As an airman, service before self is different than it is as a senior NCO. It just is, because so? With more rank, comes more responsibility. How many times have you ever heard he's a master sergeant, he should know better, or he should be here on time, or he should. Yeah. You don't. I was always taught once you become a senior NCO, you don't have duty hours. You have responsibilities. Right. And it doesn't matter how long it's going to take you. Right. You're expected to achieve those responsibilities.
I always thought of that as you have minimum duty hours.
Sure.
Because you gotta. You still have to set the standard.
Absolutely.
So if the duty day is from 7:30 to 4:30, as a senior NCO, you don't get to clock in and clock out at 7:30 and 4:30. You may go weeks at a time where that's what you do, but then other days you're gonna have to be in at 5. Right. And some days you're gonna have to stay till 9, and that's just your life now.
And you know what? Some days you're gonna come in at 9:30. And because you were in the night before until 10 o'clock in suspense, and that's just the way it goes. And really, what I have written down for that, and one of the things that I did talk about when I was at the Senior NCO Academy during my final speech or presentation to the class was about what's your plan going forward in life and in this service, and what's some of your biggest takeaways from your experience to this point? And mine is, looking at the military, is it's give and take. It's give and take. Sometimes the Air Force has demanded a lot of me, and it has taken away some of the things that I would like to have done on a personal level. Sometimes it's time with my family. Sometimes it's just time to be able to go do anything for myself or whatever. Right. and then sometimes the Air Force is given back to me.
Mm.
You know, I do get some comp time that other people don't get in civilian world in life, and we do get other amenities and things that maybe aren't provided to other people, not within their institution. And I do believe that it comes around full circle, and I think there have been a couple times in my career where I've needed the Air Force to take care of me because of personal matters, and they have done that for me.
Right.
I mean, just recently, you know, I was supposed to go to Osan to go do a remote tour. Unfortunately, it wasn't the best time for my family because of some medical concerns. So instead of the Air Force forcing me to go and deal with that hardship, they canceled my assignment.
Right.
So I feel like the Air Force took care of me. And I think I had paid that forward at some point because of all the hard work and dedication, and other times that I had on my own cognizance taken time away from my family to meet mission needs and my responsibilities.
Right.
So here it comes full circle.
I'm gonna embarrass myself a little bit. I know that I should know this better, but is it in the code of conduct, where like when the prisoner of war and they've got their code of conduct, and there's those are 5 or 6 axioms that they say all the time, right? And one of the things that sticks out, like I'd have to go back and look that thing up. I had it memorized at one point in time. But one of the things that sticks out to me is that I'll have trust in my leadership, and I'll trust in the United States, and and I'll have trust in the fact that I won't be forgotten if I am a prisoner of war, and that always that always really hit me, because I've had similar situations to you, like where you had your issue with family illnesses and whatnot. I was hospitalized for a while, and I was just completely taken out of the game unexpectedly, and my commander was always just on the ball, like right there, checking on me, make sure everything's going okay, checking on my family, checking on my other needs, and making sure that while I was out of the picture, that all my other stuff was taken care of. And that was huge to me. But again, that, like you said, that comes from paying it forward. That comes from service before self. And I think that I really like the way that you've the way that you've expanded on this idea, because to me, and what I tell the airmen about the service before self, is that I think at the airman level, it starts out with, on a Friday night, or like on a Sunday night, I'm not going to get drunk because I got to be at work on time on Monday morning, or, it's payday, so I'm going to, instead of buying some extra gizmos and gadgets, I'm going to make sure I got a haircut and that my uniform is squared away. I'm going to make sure all that kind of stuff. And those are kind of the baby steps, But I've never really taken it much further beyond that, because I think as you go along, it just becomes so much of the way that you are that you just keep doing it, Like I'm here and I'm separated from my family, but I came here because I saw that, we've got upcoming generations of airmen that needed CDCs to be rewritten, because the things that existed before were really poor quality.
Sure.
And, nobody else was willing to step up and do the job. So I said, well, okay, I'm going to make a couple more sacrifices to make sure that the next generation of EAs are going to have a good set of CDCs. It may not be as good as it could have been, but it's way better than it was.
Sure.
Because I wasn't the ideal person, but I was the best person who was willing, to come and do that kind of thing. And it's a really good point.
Well, and you had an opportunity to impact the whole career field.
Yeah.
For at least a few years,
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we put in that extra time for a much smaller impact.
Right.
At least a smaller scope, you know, people that we're impacting or immediately within our flight or our unit or whoever it is. And you're talking about being able to do something for a whole career field. I mean, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, so sometimes it's always challenging to say, hey, I know that I'd much rather be doing things, and we always have these dilemmas, but I need to be doing this now to take care of the people that I work with or to improve my unit or the situation that I'm in now. And it may not benefit me today, but I know I'm leaving it better and making it better for somebody. And then you're also setting the example for your subordinates, you know, and if you're taking care of them and you're working on programs that are improving the unit, improving their environment and their daily operations, or you're taking care of a personnel matter for them, or you're in late on a Friday night helping to solidify or improve somebody's 1206 or whatever. Those things go a long way, and then you're setting that precedence and that example for them, so that kind of dedication continues. Continues. If we all stop doing that, then eventually no one will ever see anybody doing it, and they'll be like, okay.
And we all just become union workers,
right?
You know, and like you punch in and you punch out, and then you know, if the mission calls, well, then sorry, then it's not in my contract.
And I think that's why when we talk about because when we talk about sacrifice, and I tell the airmen this all the time, is that it doesn't mean everybody who joins the service is going to sacrifice life and limb.
Right.
You make other sacrifices that you know, we kind of demand in order to put service before self.
Right.
And in addition to that, you know, let's talk about, you know, your family sacrifices. So if I'm working late on a project or to improve something or to make something better or meet a mission requirement or whatever it is, you know, my wife has to pick up that slack,
right,
and to operate without me in a household.
Yeah, and I think that it's important that the term is service before self, not service without self. So what I mean by that is that you have to pay that back. So that was some of the mistakes that I made. Is I went too far and I did service without self. And I would volunteer for a deployment that maybe was asking too much for my family, or I volunteered for something that was maybe asking too much for my family, and that's what led to a divorce. And you know, that whole family unit kind of disintegrated, and because I went too far, and it wasn't because anybody was pushing me. One of the things I was going to say earlier is that we as supervisors in leadership positions need to be careful that we're watching out for folks who are maybe taking the service before self thing a little bit too far.
Sure. So what you just
said, if you're here till 9 o'clock every night, and you've got a wife and kids at home, maybe you need to check yourself.
So especially for our young people who are just starting to learn that balance, right? Because they're not everyone's going to perfect it right away. You would think that by the time you're a senior NCO, you have had enough experience in life in the service, and that you understand that balance and what's right for you in the family, right?
Right.
But as you see a young person maybe pushing themselves too far and taking a deployment after deployment after deployment, I was going to tie what you were just saying back into deliberate development. And man, wouldn't it have been nice for you to have somebody who put his arm around you and said, "Listen, Sean, I know you really want to go again, but you know what? We're going to give somebody else an opportunity. You've already gone a bunch of times, and I think you may not see it, but I think it's really important for you to be here with your family for a little longer."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's development right there, because he may not have taught you a specific skill, but he gave you a perspective that you wouldn't have had before, and that's mentorship, and that's developing people right there. You know? So it's funny that it made me think of something. But when I worked at I was in the IG at Ramstein, and there was a captain that used to work there, and I was a master sergeant, and I was always there late, you know, and this captain just, you know, was trying to be a quality leader, and she was a great person, and she would always, every day, she would tell me, "Sergeant Rockey, go home.
Yeah.
No. And then I'd be like, okay, I want a minute. And then she'd tell me again, it's like, go home, go home. And this is every day. You know, and I was working on this big project. And finally, one day I looked at her and I said, Captain, I said, I'm a master sergeant. I've been doing this for a while now. I'm here because either I want to be or I need to be. So stop telling me to go home. Okay?
Yeah.
I said, I appreciate it. I know what you're trying to do.
Right, yeah.
I got it.
Right.
But I'm here for a reason at this point. So, you know, again, I think at that level, at that point in time in my career, I understood the balance. I knew what I could and couldn't do and what my wife could handle at the time and couldn't. And, but had I been a young airman, you know, I probably would have needed that, you know, it might have been a little bit more appropriate. But so I think, for me,
we kind of got everything I was thinking about.
Well, we talked a couple weeks ago in the commander's call about feedback and really feedback, ties right into deliberate development, feedback, deliberate development, and counseling and mentorship are all kind of, I think, tied together in one way, shape, or form. And I said a little bit about it at the commander's call. Is just that it's really frustrating to hear people say, you know, nobody ever developed me, or I never had a mentor. No one's ever mentored me, you know. And I'm a firm believer that mentorship doesn't just fall on your lap.
Oh, right.
You know, you do have to go and seek this stuff out. You know, not every supervisor is created equal.
Right.
We know that.
Right.
So if a person's not getting what they want or feels like they're not getting what they want, one, they need to address it with their supervisor and the people who are there, part of their team, who are responsible for developing them and working with them on a daily basis. But sometimes you have to be proactive. And, you know, we talked about a lot of the traps that you can fall into and who you seek out mentorship and development from. And, you know, my greatest experience to this point as an NCO regarding mentorship was being a tech select and then a tech sergeant leading a flight at Mildenhall. And on the opposite side of the CE building there in our squadron were 4 CE operations master sergeants that a couple of them I got along with real well and a couple of them I didn't get along with real well. But I would always go down there as I went or came upon an issue or a challenge that I didn't know how to face yet.
Right.
And I wouldn't just sit in my office and wait for someone to come down there and say, hey, what challenge do you have today?
Right.
Can I help you with? You know?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen.
No.
That doesn't happen. So I got out of my desk, I walked down the hallway, and I sat down in front of them, and I said, hey, you know, Sergeant Hernandez, Sergeant Rios, what do I do here? How would you handle it? I didn't always agree with them.
Right.
I had a very different perspective than a lot of those guys on a lot of different topics, but it at least opened my mind, and I didn't fear hearing something that I was going to disagree with.
Right.
And I didn't fear engaging with somebody who may disagree with me.
Right.
And I think a lot of times those fears stifle our drive to go and seek out mentorship. Good, honest, unbiased mentorship.
Right.
So
that's kind of been the theme of a lot of this stuff. This is a subject that comes up a lot, is self-awareness. Just knowing where you are. Knowing, and then looking around the room, or around your organization, or around the installation, and seeing somebody who has the skill set that you know that you need to develop. You know? And, and sitting down and saying, oh, that person's really good at that. So
Now I'll just, you know, while we close here, I'll just say that there's a flip side of that too, though. if you have any experience in the military, you have the ability to mentor people. Because there's always going to be somebody who doesn't have the same life experience as you, and doesn't have the same experiences in the service as you do.
Right.
So a lot of times, I watch NCOs and senior NCOs walk past the opportunity to mentor somebody. You know, and so I talk about seeking it out, but we also have to be active and engaged leaders. And just because somebody's not your immediate subordinate or maybe doesn't work in your immediate section or flight or squadron, if you see an opportunity to mentor them and you think you can provide them something, then take the 5 minutes out of your time to go engage with them and say real quick, introduce yourself and say, hey, by the way, you did this is great. I've done some of the same things and this is how I've done better. And you start to build a relationship with somebody who's outside of your normal contingent of people, and they probably appreciate it, you know.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that gets paid forward.
It does, and it's appreciated.
Yeah.
You know, it's appreciated. Even since I've been here, I was involved with a briefing to the CG, and we had an NCO from the detachment briefing, and just knew the information. I mean, whatever he was briefing, he knew everything about that topic, but he wasn't looking at the CG. He was looking at the slides.
Oh.
So he did a phenomenal job.
Right.
With how he spoke. His words were great. He was loud enough. Everything was good.
Right.
He just didn't look at the commander.
Oops.
And so and this individual wasn't under my purview at all. And once the meeting was over, I just kind of looked to see if anybody else might engage with them and give them some feedback. And, I've done a lot of briefings and talked to a lot of people throughout my career. And so I picked up on that. I just brought him aside and said, hey, man, you did a phenomenal job. You know all that information. You didn't need to look at the slides. I said, next time we do this, make sure you look at the commander while you're briefing.
Right.
We did it again 6 months later, ironically. He was in there, killed it.
Yeah.
Right? And we didn't talk about it between those 6 months. But after it was over, he came up to me and he said, thank you. Yeah. Because that was way better, wasn't it? And I said, yes, it was. Yeah. And it just took, that's just a small example, but it just takes 5 minutes to say, hey, this is how you can maybe tweak what you're doing and make it better. And for the rest of his career now, as he goes forward, he's going to realize, okay, I'm gonna talk to the person, not the slide.
Yep. It's a good idea.
Simple.
Any last thoughts?
I think that's it. Yeah. Unless you have any more questions for me.
No, I think that was good.
I hope so.
Good talk.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I only have 2 more interviews left in this series, transgender issues and career planning. Definitely come back and listen to those ones because there's bound to be a lot of good information. After this project is done, I'll start working on a personal podcast project that will take up a lot of my time. If there's any other subjects you'd like me to discuss in this series or someone else you'd like me to interview, now's the time to ask. Also, I've had a few people apologize for not listening to these interviews, but these are here for you guys. We decided to put these out as podcasts or YouTube videos specifically so you can listen to them on your own time. As the year progresses, there will be more Commander's Days like the last one we had, and in each of those, as you remember, we have group discussions to talk about the subject of the day. After each one of those group discussions, if you want, you can come back and listen to these interviews and see if you can get anything else out of them. Or if you know the subject of the Commander's Day, you can listen to this ahead of time and bring a little more information to the group discussion. But however you choose to do it, or whether you choose to do it, I hope you do listen, and I hope you do go back and listen to some of the other interviews. I know I'm going to, when this whole project is done, go back and, lessons learned and just see what else I can apply to my own life. Either way, I appreciate your time and attention, and I hope that you can use these to keep yourself flying, keep fighting, and keep winning.